Hello, everyone. This is JD Calderon, and this is Indy Comics Explained. And today, yet again, I brought another fantastic guest on. I got Mr. Al Nickerson, a long-time professional within the industry of comic books. A lot of history in this business. So much history. I'm not even going to ask him a lot of my basic questions. We're going to go into some questions that I normally don't like. Some deep questions into him and his history, because his history is just that interesting. So Al, here you are, man. Please introduce yourself.
I think you just did.
Yeah, I know. But you can do it better than I can.
Yeah, I've been working in comics since 1994, comics and animation. And yeah, I worked for Marvel and DC Comics and Archie Comics as an inker. I was an animator at Sesame Street and Nickelodeon, MTV Animation. I was a designer on the Ace Ventura Pet Detective animated series. And I've been self-publishing, creator-owned work, and I'm self-publishing a graphic novel series called The Sword of Eden.
Nice, nice. All right, so now you when I was checking you out, you studied at SVA, right? You studied under Harvey Kurtzman, Will Eisner, Sal Amendola,
Yep.
Gene Colan,
and Erwin Hasen.
Erwin Hasen.
He did Gandhi.
Yes, yes. I have a funny story about him. Well, no, not bad. Not bad. He was a very nice man. I used to work at a FedEx, not too far from where I live. And he used to come in. And at first, I didn't know who he was, right? And he would bring these manuscripts for these fantasy novels, right? And I was just like, wow, okay. And he would have me copy them. He was sending them off to editors. And I was like, have you ever had one published? And I asked him, one access says, how many of these have you done? And he said about 7 or 8. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I said, have you ever had any published? And he was like, no. And I was like, damn. So somewhere out there is like 7 or 8 fantasy novels that he's written.
By Erwin Hasen.
Yeah.
Wow. See, well, I got a kind of a funny story because, so Erwin Hasen was one of my teachers at SVA. And I've been going to the New York Comic Con every year since 2006 when it started. And every year Erwin would be at the con and he had a table set up with all of his artwork. And every year I would go to him, I would say hello, I would introduce myself, I would tell him I was one of his students, and he would never remember. And I would have him sign my little sketchbook and stuff. But that played out every single year. But a really, really nice guy. So yeah, he was a good teacher. Like Will was great. Will was probably my favorite teacher at SVA. And Sal Amendola, he was great too.
Nice. So let me ask you this: what was your biggest takeaway of like studying under like someone like Will Eisner?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is like we know Will's contribution to comics, and we know I've never met anyone in my entire life that was so optimistic about the form than Will Eisner. He was always very positive about the form. He always believed that sequential art comics, its future was always brighter. And he always was a stickler on that comics and sequential art was as valid a form of entertainment than anything else. And he would refer to it as a literary form as well as an art form. But yeah, storytelling was his thing. He was very positive about the medium, and he had an excellent rapport with young artists. So those were the things that, I really took away from him. And also, here's a kind of a funny thing. So I was at SVA, and my whole goal was to become an inker at Marvel or DC. So I still loved, I still love superheroes, but I was still a huge fan of Marvel and DC, and I wanted to work for those two publishers. And I think in the very first class of Will's class, he said that comics were more than two mutants trashing one another. And I wrote that down. And this is a kid who actually wanted to work for Marvel and DC, and eventually it sort of dawned on me that, and Will's attitude was this too, that comics were more than just superheroes. Like, he wasn't a big fan of superheroes, and he understood the superhero genre's place in comics. But he, made me very much aware that it doesn't just have to be superheroes, even though I do like superheroes, but it could be any kind of genre. And I think if Will saw a lot of the comics that are out today, because there's so much different genre now. It's not just superhero. I mean, The Walking Dead, like a zombie comic, was so popular. I think that something like that would have made Will happy in regards to that. There's a variety of genre.
Yeah, something like I would imagine like Saga. Even well, he got to see Bone. He got to see Cerebus. He got to see a bunch of stuff that
Yeah, he and Dave worked on a story together. It was an issue of Cerebus Jam. Right. It was a crossover between the Spirit and Cerebus. And I actually asked Will about it in class. Right. And Will said he had a great time working on it. And I told that to Dave some years later, and Dave printed that up in an interview.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, all right. Let me ask you this. What would you have liked to have asked Will that you didn't get to ask him?
I don't think it's so much asking. You got to so Will was my teacher for the last three of my 4 years at SVA. So I had his class the last 3 years. The last year I actually had 2 of his classes. And we always knew him as Will, right? So he was the guy who drew the Spirit. He drew all these graphic novels. We understood his place in comics, but he was Will. He was our teacher, right?
Right.
My regret really is I wish I had recorded all of his lectures. That would have been something. So that's something I wish again, he was just Will. So I wish I really appreciated that experience a little bit more. So.
Yeah. We were all young once. You know what I mean?
Yeah, young and stupid.
Exactly. I was, we were talking before the show, and I told you my wife studied at SVA, and she studied with Will. And I actually got to sit in on one of, I was picking her up early, and she asked Will if I could sit in on the class, and he allowed it, and I sat in the back of the room. It was awesome.
That must have been great.
Yeah. I actually did a whole semester of that with Denny O'Neil too.
Oh yeah, I never met Denny O'Neil. How was that?
That was awesome because I'm a self-taught writer, so it was interesting to sit there and listen to him talk about theories and techniques that I used in my own writing, but I didn't know other people have thought about it. You know what I mean? It was already discovered and things because I was young. I was like 19, 20 years old. So you don't think like, oh, you mean other people have already done this? Okay. Maybe if I read a book, I would have found this out.
Look how clever I am.
Exactly. So, I mean, getting on with that, like, so we know Will Eisner is a huge inspiration on you. What other artists, I know you have other inspirations in the industry. Who would you consider some of your greatest inspirations?
When I was in high school, I was a huge fan of John Byrne and his work, and Terry Austin. Right. And I noticed that all the comics that Terry Austin had inked looked better than anyone else's comics that someone else had inked. So then I realized the importance of inking and inkers, and that's what made me want to be an inker. And I decided, I saw Terry's work on X-Men with John Byrne, and I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. And also Frank Miller and Klaus Janson on Daredevil. That stuff blew my mind. Like, I love that work. And I kind of knew who Jack Kirby was, but when I got a little bit older, I really got into Kirby. So Jack Kirby's influenced John Byrne, Terry Austin, Frank Miller, Klaus Janson. So yeah, those guys were, and I still love their work,
Yeah. I mean, that's the one wonderful thing about it. Is for me, Frank Miller was my guy. Primarily, I mean, not even as an artist, but as a writer. That was my thing. I remember like the first comic that got me inspired to write comics was Daredevil 168. When Elektra first comes in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was like the first one. I read it and I was like, yeah, if I was to write a comic, this is like the level I want to achieve. This is the sort of thing I want to do.
Yeah, I still love that stuff. Well, Frank Miller had mentioned this a bunch of times in interviews, but he swiped the idea of Elektra from Will Eisner's The Spirit. Right. There was that character Sanseref who was the Spirit's girlfriend. So Miller just totally swiped that and made Elektra and put that in Daredevil. But yeah, I mean, that was a time also, I hope I don't spoil anything. Although she got better. When they died, they sort of stayed dead. So the whole Elektra thing was just fantastic. And it's amazing how, like, and although I didn't watch it, like the Netflix series of Daredevil, like I never watched it, but it seems like a lot of that was taken from Frank Miller's run on Daredevil.
Yeah, a lot of it was. I mean, it was interesting. I didn't watch the last season, so I couldn't speak to it. But the first two seasons, a bunch of it was taken from
Daredevil. Yeah, so it was like Elektra, Kingpin, Bullseye, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Which was great in the comics.
Yeah. Now, so obviously you went to SVA, you graduated, did all that good stuff, right? What was your first gig in comics?
Well, the first real paying gig, I was an inker for Warp Graphics in 1994. So that was like all the ElfQuest books. So I was inking a book called ElfQuest Blood of 10 Chiefs. And I did that for about a year. And then I got into animation. I was working for MTV Animation, and that kind of started my time as an animator. Then I got back into comics again after that.
Right. Now, what was the big difference between, like, you know, working on it? I know there's a huge gulf between those two, you know, those two crafts. Now, like, what was your big takeaway from that? Like obviously you went back into inking, so that was probably your preference. But, you know, what got you into animation from comics?
Yeah, I mean, when I went to school, I didn't take any classes to learn animation. But this is around the time with the speculator boom. Right. So then it sort of collapsed, and publishers were just canceling books. Comic book stores were going out of business. So I had to find some work.
Right.
So that's when I just decided to do animation.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Now, did you find it, well, obviously it was different, but did you find it much different than working in comics?
Right, yeah. Well, like what you're saying, they're two different mediums, right? So we read comics, but we watch animation. So animation has a lot more in common with film, and comics really has, since it's a literary form, has a lot more in common with prose.
Right.
So they are very different mediums. So, yeah, I mean, so.
No, I got you.
So I was living either in Manhattan or outside of Manhattan. So even back then, there were still animation studios in New York, and there's a couple of still now. But yeah, so, and you just know people. Yeah, and that's when DC was still in Manhattan as well. So yeah, it was just, you know, finding work and going from one company to the next.
Gotcha. Now, were you doing were you inking cells, or were you doing
no, it was paper. Yeah, it was like, this is after cells. So yeah, I was inking on paper, and they were just scanning in the drawings and then coloring everything in Photoshop. So it was kind of a cool place at MTV at that time, because even though I didn't work on it, they were wrapping up Beavis and Butthead. They were, I think they already had done the Max TV show, which I was a huge fan of the comic. Yeah. So yeah, it was fun.
All right, that's cool. Now, coming back into comics, well, actually, hold on. Let's look a little bit at Warp Graphics now. How did you get that gig? I mean, did you meet them at a convention? Did you go up to their offices? Did you submit?
I knew somebody who worked there, and I showed them my samples. I took a trip up to Poughkeepsie, where they're located, and I had a meeting with Richard Pini, and yeah, they hired me. So yeah, it worked out fine. So yeah, so I worked for them. I was inking for them for like a year.
Right. Now, did you do a lot of work in that year? Did you do like 18 issues? Did you just do an?
No, I think Blood of 10 Chiefs was bi-monthly. So I probably did like 6 or 7 issues.
Gotcha. Now, was that enough for you to live on at the time?
Yeah. At that time, I had an apartment with a college buddy of mine. So yeah, you know, yeah, it worked out great.
All right, cool. The only reason I ask is because I hear of the difficulties that sometimes some creators have just surviving.
Yeah, that's probably true. It depends who you work for, but also, see, that's what I tell my students, like, you know, if you want to work in comics or animation, try to get a job with the big guys first, you know, Marvel or DC, and then you work your way down. But that was at a time when a lot of these publishers were making a lot of money, and yeah, Warp Graphics, they gave me a good page rate and royalties and return of artwork. So yeah, that was great.
All right, no, that's fantastic. Yeah. No, that's good. Now, when you got back, so when you got into animation. Now, when leaving animation, getting back into comics, what was your first gig getting back into either DC or Marvel?
So like in 2001, I was an animator for Sesame Street for 2.5 years. In 2001, they just fired like half our staff, and then 3 months later, they got rid of everybody else. So yeah, so from January of 1999 to June or July of 2001, that's when I was an animator at Sesame Street, and I had to find work. So I had a meeting with DC Comics, and the editor there was Dan Raspler, and he hired me, and I started working on Justice League Adventures.
Okay.
And yeah, I worked, and then like a year later, I started working for Archie Comics at the same time. So I was working for DC and Archie Comics for about 8.5 years. So, and the funny thing with DC was that since, I mean, that's, it's a good chunk of time, 8.5 years. Oh, yeah. I was thinking about this the other day, and yeah, I had like 4 or 5 different editors at DC. They were either getting fired or they kept leaving and stuff. So yeah, but this is still, again, still when DC was still in Manhattan. So yeah, just walk on over, drop off artwork or pick up artwork, and yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Now, just on the technical end of it, like how many pages a day were you producing?
If I could do a page a day, you're right on schedule. So, and I never had any problems. And also DC was pretty good because they give you like a lot of advance notice in regards to your due date. So that was great. The only problem that really occurred, because I was working for Archie and DC at the same time, there was one summer where DC was giving me so much work, I had to make a decision. So I had to tell one of the publishers, stop sending me work for a little while. And it's kind of a good position to be in, but you really don't want to have to do it. But there's no way I would have been able to make my deadlines for both publishers that summer. Right. So I had to tell Archie Comics, hey, stop sending me work for a little while, and I need to focus on this DC stuff. And once that kind of slowed down, then I started working for both companies again.
Gotcha. Now, I'll ask you the two sides of this question. I'll ask you the good side first. In that time that you worked at those companies, who was your favorite penciler to ink?
Oh, Fernando Ruiz. So Fernando Ruiz, I worked with him a lot at Archie Comics, and he was my favorite penciler. I love his work. Inking his work was great. I was always asking to get his stories to ink, and we became kind of chummy. So I see Fernando every year at the New York Comic Con, when we had Comic Cons in New York before the COVID craziness. But yeah, he was my favorite penciler. He was like fantastic.
Cool. Now, why? Like, what is it that he did that drew you to him?
Well, there's a great amount of craft in Fernando's penciling. It was very tight artwork, really kind of cartoony, and just beautifully drawn. It was just wonderful to ink his stuff.
Okay, cool. Now, the reverse of that question, like, and you don't have to mention a name if you don't want to, because I mean, I can understand, like, like I wouldn't say necessarily who was the worst person you've inked, but maybe the person, because different styles, you know what I mean? Because you'll end up with a person who maybe just has a style that doesn't line up with you correctly. I don't know if you've ever encountered that.
Well, the thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but basically, yeah, that's the basic question. Like, who would you say is perhaps the opposite of your favorite ink? I mean, your favorite pencil.
Well, the thing is that since my style is kind of cartoony, especially at DC, they put me on all the Cartoon Network kind of books, so I really fit well over there. There was a penciler at one particular publisher whose pencils were really quite terrible. And I would have to redraw those pencils and then ink them in. So that wasn't a whole lot of fun. But you got to keep in mind, I mean, but this is what I always wanted to do. So God has really blessed my career in regards to comics and animation, and I'm very thankful. But yeah, I still love inking, and I think that's probably my favorite process in regards to making comics. Right. But yeah, I can't imagine ever working with anyone ever again, since I pencil and ink and write my own stuff now.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was also one of the other questions I want to ask you. Is there ever, you think, either an opportunity or maybe a time or some type of project where you think you could be somehow enticed to come back to mainstream publishing?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's no, I'm very JD. I have very strong feelings about this stuff. Yeah, I had enough. I had enough of work made for hire. I had enough of working for other people's work. I'm very thankful. It was very much a blessing to have this career working for other publishers. I worked for everybody with whom I wanted to work. But yeah, there's no way. I just, you get tired of drawing Jughead and you just want to do your own stuff. Now, not every artist is like that. I mean, some guys and gals, I guess, just want to draw. And if that makes them happy, that's totally cool. But if you're a creative person and you want to tell your own stories, then doing work made for hire probably might not be the right place to work.
I understand. It's the reason why I never pursued a career in mainstream comics.
I mean, I tell my students this all the time, and I talk about the business side of comics all the time, and contracts and work made for hire. And what I say is that, and I have students now. I have 2 students going to SVA now, which is wonderful, and I have students that want to be animators and stuff, and even want to work for Disney. But I'm like, if you want to work for other people under work made for hire, just understand the circumstances in which you're working. And if that's cool with you, and oftentimes it is, then yeah, do it. There's, as long as you don't get taken advantage of, and no one swipes your stuff, yeah, it should be okay. Right. I can't do it, but I mean, I don't want to begrudge anyone else that.
Right, no. Yeah, of course. Now, when you say swipes your stuff, now what do you mean exactly by that? I mean, just as a rough example. It doesn't have to be
when I talk about these things, I'm always thinking of like Jack Kirby, Jerry Siegel, and Joe Shuster, Steve Ditko, Wally Wood, and stuff. And if anyone actually knows the history of comics and how some of these guys are treated by the larger publishers, it's quite terrible. So that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because that's definitely being taken advantage of.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Kirby estate, they sued Disney and Marvel and Sony, and then when the Supreme Court was going to hear the case, they settled out of court. And if that case if the Supreme Court saw that case, that would have changed work made for hire in this country. I was kind of hoping for that and see how things would turn out.
True. I mean, and that's, I'm pretty sure they got a huge settlement out of it, and good for them.
Yeah, and usually with these kinds of settlements, there's a non-disclosure agreement, so you don't know exactly what the terms were. But I would imagine, that the Kirby estate would say, you own all copyright and trademark of these properties that our dad or grandfather either created or co-created. In return, you just give us a truckload of money, and then you saw Jack Kirby's name on a lot of Marvel comics afterwards.
Yeah. So now you went to SVA. You went through all these years working at Marvel and DC. So let me ask you this, because early on in my life, 11, 12, 13 years old, I met Archie Goodwin. Okay. And I met him at a couple of conventions, and that man was incredible. I only met him twice. I wish I could have spent years under his tutelage, because every time I went, it was like some master class in editing, because I would just stand next to him. Some guy would pull out a portfolio, and he would just start giving instruction. So I learned a great deal just at that very young age. But what was the best advice any editor gave you?
That's a very good question. I've always heard a lot of good things about Archie Goodwin, but I never had the opportunity to meet him. But yeah, I always heard he was a great, great guy. The best advice, I don't know. It's weird. Every editor is different, and every publisher is different. DC was really good for the vast majority of the time in regards to the way they treated me.
Right.
But there's some publishers, you never hear anything. Like, you send the work in, you don't know if you did a good job or not. And there's one publisher. So I would send, like when I first started working for them, I would send in the work and I wouldn't hear anything. So I would call them up. I'm like, well, how'd you like the work? And they said, if there were any problems, we would let you know. So I'm like, okay. So if I don't hear anything from you guys, then, I guess everything's fine. But DC was always great with their accolades and the way they treated me. I don't know about, the advice that I would give young artists would be that make sure your stuff is on time. Like, that goes a long way with an editor. If you hit the due date and stuff, if you don't hit your due date, then there's like 1,000 guys behind you that want your job. So that's probably the most important thing, and being persistent. So but as far as advice from certain editors, I can't think of anything. Nothing really stands out. So
okay. No, that's fair enough. It's funny. I worked professionally for a short time in the 90s, about 3 years. I did work for Central Park Media and P Anime. I did something called Tenchi Muyu, and I wrote for them. And it was the same situation. I would send in my scripts, and I never heard anything. So I was like, okay, I guess everything's fine. They paid me. So
yeah,
I was like, okay,
right. But but every company is sort of different. So
that's why I asked that question. I'm just very intrigued as to what information other creators have gotten. Now I know you're doing, there's a couple of things. you're a Christian, right? And you're doing comics, you know, and how do you reflect that? How do you reflect your faith through your work now?
Well, since I'm self-publishing and I'm writing and drawing my own stuff, it's pretty easy. So, there's a couple things. One is like, again, I was kind of, and even like when I was doing work made for hire, I was still doing creator-owned stuff. So I'd work with other creators. We would self-publish something or have some of our characters meet in someone else's book, but it was still creator-owned. But yeah, I just sort of got tired of doing work made for hire. And like I said before, that God has always blessed my career. And I wanted to give back to God. And I wanted to use a medium that I love to share the gospel. And that's kind of what The Sword of Eden is all really about. It's a Christian graphic novel, and it's sharing the gospel through comics, sequential art. And it's also creating content for, I think, a very untapped audience. Because there's a lot of Christians out there that might not be reading comics, or they might not find something that they might enjoy reading, but something like The Sword of Eden is not only, I think I'm trying to reach out to the lost and share the gospel, but also create content for Christians where they're not going to feel like they're compromising on their principles or feeling like they're insulted.
Right.
And it's also superhero stuff too, which I like. So.
Got you. Now, so let's talk. So walk me through what is The Sword of Eden about? Like what's the gist of that story? Yeah, well, it is a superhero comic. It starts off with a teenage Jewish girl who kind of has superpowers. She's kind of fast and she's kind of strong. Her name is Rebecca Stern, and she believes that she's doing God's will by going out and fighting villains and monsters and stuff. And she kind of has like this sixth sense where she senses supernatural stuff, and that kind of leads her oftentimes into trouble. And she feels like she's doing God's will by being a superhero. So there's these other group of superheroes who have been in print before. They realize that the sword from the Garden of Eden still exists. And this is the sword that the angels use to keep people out of the Garden of Eden. Right. So the heroes believe that if they can find the sword, it could be more proof that God exists. And there's these group of demons who don't want the heroes to find the sword because then that shows that God could exist. And also it could be a very powerful weapon. So you have all these heroes and demons trying to get to the sword first, and there's kind of a fight over the sword. And the Sword of Eden graphic novel is 220 pages. So that's one of the stories. And then there's another story after that called The Return of the Green Knight, where that was the character from the old Arthurian stories. Yep. And there's also a story where the characters try to find Noah's Ark. So, yeah, so it's kind of, it's 220 page graphic novel full of comic book love. Gotcha. Now, like how long did it take you to illustrate, like write, illustrate, and create that entire work? Because that's a lot. That's dense. That's a lot of work. Yeah, Dave Sim not too long ago did a review of the book, which was great. I was a little nervous waiting for him to review the graphic novel, but thank God he was very flattering and really enjoyed it. It took a long time. It takes a long time. It's not just drawing stuff, right? So, you got to write it and draw it and do the lettering, scan everything in and format everything for your printer and send it off to the printer and proof everything. And then, it's a long process and it's wonderful. So if you like the business side of comics, it's great. But yeah, you're right. It took quite a while. But initially it was sold as a digital downloadable comic that was sold through Iverse Media. But then a lot of people were asking me to have it collected in print. So I just did that. So once I had enough pages collected and that chunk of story was done, I started thinking about collecting it in print. And self-publishing is a great way to go because I had a couple publishers that were interested in publishing it, but then and then other publishers, and we're talking about Christian book publishers who had certain criticisms, and I just didn't want to change stuff, And I had a couple publishers interested in publishing, and I'm like, well, they weren't really offering me anything that I couldn't do myself. So, and I've self-published before, so I just self-published it on my own. Now, if you don't mind me asking, what was the weirdest or strangest thing they wanted you to change?
let's see. Well, if one thing I could tell you, but then I would spoil the story, so I'm not going to do that.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Another thing was actually this was with an agent. So I had 2 or 3 literary agents in my career, and one of them. And keep in mind, I've already started drawing the story and I started creating the character. One agent wanted me to change the character because she's Jewish, from Jewish to being Muslim, and have the story take place in Iraq. And I already had started drawing it, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So he said, well, if you want to make those changes, I'll represent you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not really willing to do that. So yeah, I did.
Now, did he have any justification for that?
I think maybe he thought if the character is Jewish, it might be a little bit more controversial.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't see how. But okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I don't want to make fun of agents or editors, but I think I will. If agents and editors, if they knew how to write and draw stuff, they wouldn't be agents and editors, right? So they would be writers and artists. So I think as far as editors go, if their job is to sort of be a traffic cop and navigate everything and keep everybody on time in regards to the work, then that's cool. But yeah, if they were really knew how to draw or write, then they wouldn't be editors.
Gotcha. Although there are some editors who can write.
Maybe.
Well, Archie Goodwin. That's the one I can speak.
Yes, that's very true.
Yes, Archie Goodwin. I do Archie can write. So.
Oh yeah. So.
All right, that's all. And now currently, where are you selling this book through? Because where are you? Do you have a website you're going through, or how are you selling? Where could someone get a physical copy?
Yeah, I do have a website, theswordofeden.com. So if you go to theswordofeden.com, you can purchase the book through eBay, Amazon. It's being sold through christianbook.com as well, and they're great. They're a huge online Christian distributor, so they sell books and T-shirts and everything, and they're fantastic. And also there's a link to my Messianic Comics web store where you can just purchase the book and use your PayPal account. So if you like Amazon, eBay, if you have a PayPal account, you could buy the book through me. You can go to christianbook.com and order it there. So, and also there's a Christian bookstore in New England. They have a chain of Christian bookstores in New England, and they want to sell the book.
Nice.
So that should be starting up. They said sometime this fall they want to purchase copies of the book. So when that happens, I'll let everybody know about that too. Yeah, so if I can get it into Christian bookstores, then that would be great.
No, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, and christianbook.com, they're fantastic. They were just they bought 100 pounds of the book. So yeah, I just got a big box, put 100 pounds of the book in there, and they paid for shipping. So I went to a FedEx office, and yeah, lugging around a big box full of your graphic novels that's 100 pounds. Yeah, that ain't so easy.
No.
But they were christianbook.com. They're fantastic. They pay for shipping, and I love those guys. They're fantastic.
Yeah, that's why I tell everybody if I do a couple of indie comics myself, and my wife is my illustrator. One of the books, and she sets up all the websites. She does all that stuff. I say she's a smart one. I get to carry the boxes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that works out fine between you guys. Writing and drawing. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, what I do is I write the scripts, and I hand them to her, and then I walk away, and I never inquire again. And then eventually, I end up with pages.
So is it like a Marvel method, or is it more like full script?
I have a hybrid style. What I do is I tend to describe a scene, but I write out all of my dialogue, and I give I give facial instructions. I like back in the 90s when everybody was just doing the and then there would be a word balloon.
Right.
I don't dig that. If someone's talking, I like to know if they're smiling. Whether or not whatever the facial expression and whatever their mood is. So I do all that sort of thing. So it's some kind of weird hybrid style because I don't break it down page by page.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha. If that works out, then that's great. What I found is if your characters are really well thought out and you stick them in a room together, then they just start talking on their own.
Yeah.
So actually scripting dialogue. I mean, that's kind of where it starts for me. You stick them in a room together, they start talking, and then you visualize everything. I do thumbnails, and then I start penciling everything.
Yeah. That's definitely. Oh yeah. So let me ask you that. How do you lay out your stories? Are you a what we like to refer, I mean, you probably heard these terms before. Are you a pantser or a plotter, right? Do you just jump at the keyboard and just start typing away, or are you sitting back and you got your little string, your post-it notes, and you're trying to connect the dots. Like, what type of method are you using?
I have notebooks, right? So I'm just like, so I start thinking about dialogue, and then I got to write it down, and then sometimes I'll get a visual and I'll draw like a little thumbnail of that panel. And then once I figure out what's going to happen on that page, I'll just do like a little rough of the page, do a layout, and just pencil it out 10 by 15 on a sheet of Bristol board. I do all my inking by hand still, so I use a brush, Winsor Newton Series 7 Sable brush and a Hunt 102 nib, and then I scan everything in. So in Photoshop, I do all my lettering, my gray tones, and all my coloring. So it's a mix between, traditional pen and ink on paper and digital coloring and lettering.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Now, have you ever thought of crowdfunding?
No.
Okay.
This is going to sound weird. When I was looking around for a printer, the best quote I got was from a printer in Canada. So I went with them, and that actually worked out fine. So, so that worked great.
Oh, okay. No, I mean crowdfunding.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm trying not to say anything stupid. So,
gotcha. Yeah, because you said printers. I was like, there's a disconnect. Now, let me ask you a question. When you printed your books, did you do offset? Like you printed 1,000 books?
Yeah, about 1,000 books. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A Maquis, they're a printer in Canada. So it worked out great. Even with shipping costs, everything worked out fine.
Gotcha. Okay,
yeah, they gave me the best quote. A couple other comic book guys used them for like trade paperbacks, so I went with them. They sent me samples of some of the things Maquis did, some of the books they printed. So I went that route.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Because
Well, there are options. Crowdfunding. There's like print on demand, but if you're gonna do print on demand, you're not gonna make any money.
No,
because it costs a lot more per unit on print on demand, and then just getting like a large print run of 1,000 books and have them ship it to you.
Right. No, yeah, no, of course. No, I was just gonna say that 1,000 books is like the break that you need to hit to use offset, as opposed to using something like print on demand. So yeah.
Yeah, it was offset.
No, that's cool. The only reason I bring up, I use Indemand. I mean, I use like Kickstarter and Indiegogo and all these things, and I use them like frequently and often, like a demon. And I always advise everybody to do it.
Well, there's also Indie Crowdfund now too, as well.
They're having problems at the moment, unfortunately. They in the last few days they've been having issues with I guess the people who transfer the money.
Yes, right.
Yeah, they've been having issues with that, which sucks. I mean, because what's funny is I was just talking to the Wheelers, and I just signed up and I just started putting stuff up.
Yeah.
To start a campaign, and then this thing happened. I was like, okay, well.
I love those guys. Indie Crowdfund, they're great. So yeah, I hope that works out for them.
No, I hope so too. Have you ever thought of going to Diamond?
Well, here's another story for you.
Okay.
So, because I've never had any problems with Diamond. Like I've talked to other self-publishers and indie comic book creators, and they were telling me, like, you hear all these horror stories with Diamond all the time. I've never had any problems with Diamond at all. Like I self-published through them, never had any problems with them at all. But when I had the Sword of Eden done, since I had a relationship with them, I said, I got this 220-page graphic novel. Will you guys, want to take a look at it? And they're like, well, send us some JPEGs. You don't have to send us a huge PDF. You don't have to send us the whole book or anything. Just send us a couple of JPEGs. So they passed on it. And it was the only time they ever passed on any of my stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did they give you any reason?
They gave me a reason. I don't know how honest it was. But actually, all right, let me. They said that I didn't have as strong of a social media presence as they wanted. So I don't know about that.
Because it's funny because I've been hearing about that too. Like they want like their indie publishers to have like X amount of Twitter followers and X amount of Facebook things, and I'm like, what?
Well, they didn't tell me that prior to my sending the book off to them.
Right?
Some of the JPEGs and stuff. So yeah, it's not a big deal. So it would have been nice to have the book in comic book stores. But if I can get the book in the more Christian bookstores, that'll be wonderful.
No, that'd be incredible. I mean, no, because like I said, I've been self-publishing since 91, 92.
Oh, all right.
And I've gone through Diamond. And I was there when there was 13 distributors, not just the one.
Oh yeah, and you stuck with Diamond, or did you have other distributors as well?
No. Well, back in the day, there was 13 of them. So
right.
I used them all.
Diamond?
No, I used them all.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So I mean, as an independent publisher, you could sell as a nobody, because I was a kid. I could sell 4,500 books through those 13 distributors. Now you go through Diamond, you get a sale for 900 books, and you're like dancing a jig. You're like, yay, I did something, and it's kind of sad where it's gone,
You know what the interesting thing though is, like, nowadays there's a lot more opportunity for creative people. So you could do a web comic. Like, if you're into music, you can just stick stuff on YouTube. You could sell through eBay or Amazon and self distribute. So I think there's a lot more opportunity for artists and writers and stuff. And I think that's great. We don't have to just go through Diamond. So yeah, and I do like the business side of art. So yeah, it's fine with me. So.
Yeah. No, like I said, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, since we have Indiegogo, we have Kickstarter, Indie crowdfund. Now there's a friend of mine. He's doing a small distributor called Liberty Distribution, which is all for independent comics. And
that's for comic book retailers?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
You gotta send me a link.
Yeah, I will. His name is Varian. I'll put you in touch with him.
Very cool.
Yeah. He's a cool guy. I don't know if you know Peter Samedi from Alterna Comics.
I know of him. I don't think we ever met, though.
He's doing something called Alterna Distribution.
Yes. Oh, is he? Oh, all right.
Yeah. He's starting to take in, like, what he would do. What he wants is you to send in a copy of what you got, and then he'll review it. If he likes it, he'll take you on. And he has like a couple different systems where you could either do back end, or he'll order 50 copies from you, just pay you.
All right. Wow.
But it all depends on how he feels, if he can sell it.
Yeah, I like some of those books he's publishing.
Yeah. So I mean, it like I said, those opportunities are growing, and then with DC breaking away with Diamond, now we have Lunar. Yeah. So yeah. So Lunar, which is one company, and then USCIS, whatever they are, Midtown Comics.
Yeah, Midtown Comics. Yeah, that was a weird one. I didn't think that was going to happen. The whole Midtown Comics thing.
Yeah.
But good for them. Yeah, I think. Yeah, more opportunity. Free market stuff is fantastic.
Exactly. And what I didn't know for the longest time, Midtown, they fulfill Marvel's subscription service.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they've been doing that for years, and I had no idea that it was.
Oh yeah, I had no idea either.
All right. So Al, we've been at this for a minute. So we're coming close to the end. We're not there just yet, though. But I got a few questions for you first.
Sure.
First, where can people find you, your work, everything else? And, where can they find you?
Well, I'm not going to give you my address, so I don't want any stalkers. So, but yeah, the swordofeden.com. So yeah, if you go to the swordofeden.com, you could watch a bunch of videos, purchase the book, The Sword of Eden, from all the different places I had mentioned before, and also links to my Facebook page and my Twitter account.
All right, cool. And now, is there anything I didn't ask you that you maybe wanted to discuss, or maybe I didn't get a chance to ask you?
Not really. I mean, one thing that I often like to talk about is comic book creators' rights and things like the Creators' Bill of Rights and that sort of stuff. But I think I probably made my feelings known about that stuff. I guess one thing I would say, well, because I also teach. I teach at a college, SUNY Orange. So I teach a couple classes every other semester on art. I teach a comics class. So one of the things I talk to my students about is we talk about contracts and submitting work to editors and that sort of thing. We really do focus not just on how to make comics, but the business side of working in comics. I just wish that more people that actually worked in comics talked about contracts. Because, like, I didn't learn anything about contracts when I was in school. Like, I learned everything about contracts after college, when I started working in comics and animation. And I wish that more people are vocal about that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
So I think the thing is, like, publishers when I started working for one particular publisher, I was talking to one of the other artists, and he was like, our publisher does not want freelancers talking about things like page rates. So they don't like that to happen. And I guess there's a reason why maybe some creative people don't like talking about contracts, because you might get into that discussion of page rates, and not everybody feels comfortable talking about that.
Gotcha.
But you just got to know, because like you don't want to sign anything away that you don't want to sign away. So, and that's one thing I like about the Creators Bill of Rights, because it gives young artists an awareness of what their rights are. So yeah, check out the Creators Bill of Rights online. Scott McGlad mentions it on his website, also at youcan'teraseinc.com, which is one of my websites. I've had long discussions with like Steve Bissett, Dave Sim, and other people about comic book creators' rights.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is like I remember that entire discussion in the late '90s, early 2000s, but as of the last 10 years, you don't hear that discussion quite as much anymore.
Every once in a while I'll go on. Every once in a while I'll see an interview with certain people, and they'll talk about the state of things now. I see Neil Adams every year at the New York Comic Con, and I always thank him for his contributions to comic book creators' rights. I was at an event at the School of Visual Arts 2 years ago during Will Eisner Week, and Frank Miller was there, and he had a conversation with Klaus Janson about this sort of stuff, and he talked about comic book creators' rights. I still think there's a fight to be made in regards to comic book creators' rights and work made for hire. I don't think we've accomplished as much as we can. So we just don't want to we want to make sure that this sort of behavior continues and happens to young artists now. All the stuff that happened to, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Wally Wood, yeah.
Oh yeah. Cause I've been hearing some stuff about, like, as an independent publisher, I don't really keep track of what the other the big publishers are doing. You know what I mean? I just don't, like, I keep a cursory knowledge, but when I hear stuff like Boom is paying $50 a page to their artists, right?
For what? Pencils or inks, or pencil and inks?
I think pencil and inks.
Yeah, that's not a whole lot.
No, it's not.
But if you're a young person and it's your first gig, it might not be, do you want to flip burgers somewhere, or do you want to get $50 a page?
Right.
I can understand how that might be a little enticing, but yeah, it's kind of low.
Yeah. But the problem is not so much the low page rate, but so much that, on some of those books, they're selling 50 and 60,000 copies. And, when you're selling that many books, you can spring a little bit harder than $50.
Yeah, that's a little weird, man.
So that's the discussion that, it's just a little strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. One story I heard was that they had done a thing at conventions where they flew out an artist and they wanted him to do sketches on covers that they were selling for like $20 a pop or something. And he was like, "Oh, cool. So, how are we going to split this? Like, am I going to get $10? You're going to get $10?" And they were like, "No, we flew you out. You just get to draw this art." And he was just like, "No."
See, that's why it's important to talk about these things.
Yes. Yeah. And then he said for the next convention, though, they discussed it and he was getting that. But he said the artists were making like a couple grand, in a weekend, which was more money than they were making doing their books. So they cut that program out pretty quickly.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
Right.
Without original artwork, if there is any, I mean, are they allowed to sell any original artwork if they have any?
I haven't heard any complaints about that, so I'm sure that's probably good.
Yeah, okay.
Like they're getting back their artwork, yeah.
See, the thing is, like, self-publishing and doing creator-owned work, it's kind of like what you were saying. I kind of know what's going on out there, and I don't want to lose interest in creators' rights, but it's not really as much of a focus for me as it used to be, because I'm not doing work made for hire anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's the weirdest thing. So, all right. So let's move on to some of these goofy questions I like to ask everybody.
Oh, all right. I didn't know you had any. All right, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I got some really goofy questions I like to ask everybody.
All right, go ahead.
So this question I'll change up a little bit for you. So let's say if you could have a guest penciler draw a cover for you, right, that you would ink. Who would you pick?
John Byrne.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, I mean, I never got to work with John Byrne. I interviewed him a couple times when I was writing for Back Issue magazine, and since he had such an impact on me as a reader and as an artist, a young artist, yeah, that would be kind of cool.
Okay, cool, nice. All right, now I know you don't want to go work for the big boys, so we'll change up the questions a little bit. So if you got a chance and you got the golden ticket, and they said, Al, we want you to come back. We're gonna give you a choice of anything. We're gonna give you the primo contracts. You could pick whatever character or group. Who would you want to work on? Oh, and it doesn't have to be just Marvel DC. It could be any of these other companies.
Well, a couple of things are. I'm a huge fan of the Max comic book, so that might be kind of cool. Also, the Invincible. I love that book. That might be kind of neat. I don't know if you remember though, but like in the early 2000s, Marvel was thinking about publishing creator-owned work, creator-owned books. So I was in talks with them to do that, and they actually sent me a contract, and then they realized they didn't want to publish creator-owned work, so they wanted me to create a character like my character Nemeshman, because they wanted to publish a Nemeshman comic. So since they realized they didn't want to publish creator-owned work, they were like, "Can you create a character like Nemeshman, but we would own it?" And I was just like, But I was thinking, like, then when I was talking to Marvel about that stuff, it would be so cool to have like Nemeshman like get in contact with like Kang the Conqueror or Immortal or something like that, and that would have been like really cool.
All right, fair enough, cool. All right, now I have some comparatives, so we'll start off easy and work our way up. Captain America or Batman?
Oh, Captain America.
Okay. And some of these will have like why, but let's see. Godzilla or Gamera?
Godzilla.
Okay. Gamera's the big turtle.
Oh yeah. Still Godzilla.
Okay, no, that's fine. Stan Lee or Jack Kirby?
Jack Kirby, man. Hey, did you read? There was a book that came out like a year ago called Stuff Said by Tomorrow's. It had to do with the whole Jack Kirby, Stan Lee thing, and it had all their quotes over the years in chronological order.
No.
Stuff Said. Check that out. It's great book.
Okay. All right, I got to get that. I know a graphic novel just came out about his life story.
Jack Kirby, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I'll get that in my next shipment. It's supposed to come. So I'm looking forward to that. Will Eisner or Toth?
Oh, Will Eisner, absolutely. Like Toth was great. Alex Toth, don't get me wrong, but there was only one Will Eisner, so.
Right. Yeah, I know that was a little unfair.
No, it's all right.
Kirk or Picard?
I think when I was in college, I would have said Picard, but probably Kirk.
Okay, fair enough. Bernie Wrightson or Barry Windsor Smith?
Oh, that's a tough one. Barry Windsor Smith. Although I'm thinking about Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein. Yeah, that was just fantastic.
Yeah. I know it's rough.
That's a tough one. That's a real tough one.
Yeah. This one. All right. Well, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars?
I don't know. If you were asking 12-year-old Al Nickerson, I would have said Star Wars. I was a huge Star Wars fan when I was a kid. But I think things have changed so much now that, I'm not. Well, I didn't even see the last Star Wars movie. I was just so unhappy with how the franchise worked. But
yeah, no, I understand entirely. Okay, this one's a little unfair, but I don't know. Maybe not.
Go ahead.
Byrne or Perez?
Oh, John Byrne.
Okay. That's why I thought it was a little unfair.
Oh, and nothing to take away from George Perez. I mean, I loved his New Teen Titans. That was great stuff. Yeah. And his JLA Avengers was really good too.
No, yeah, he's incredible. Hellboy or Spawn?
Hellboy.
Okay.
Mike Mignola, man.
Yes, the man is incredible. All right, we've done a few of these, so we'll do a couple more. And we'll wrap it up.
So are these the same exact questions you ask other people?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. You'll be surprised. Like I have a bunch of them, and I try to mix them around. But you'll be surprised. Like it surprises the hell out of me the answers that some people come up with.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well, it's either one answer or the other.
Well, yeah, it's either one or the other. But sometimes I'll ask why, and that's the interesting part.
Oh, okay.
Why? Because I'll ask people like the Captain America or Batman, right? And some people obviously pick one or the other, but it's that why. That, like, why did you choose X character over Y, you know? And it's that answer that's really interesting. Sandman or Swamp Thing? And we're talking about the Alan Moore.
Neil Gaiman's Sandman?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I never read Neil Gaiman's Sandman, but I'm very much aware of it. So I probably have to say Swamp Thing. But yeah, I mean, well, Sandman was such a huge popular book back in the 1990s. So yeah.
No, I got you. HP
I just never got into it. So
yeah. No, yeah, I know it's one of those things. I was a crazy kid, so I read all that stuff.
Oh yeah, well there was a couple of miniseries like Death, The High Cost of Living. Mm-hmm. So those I got and I liked, but I never got into the regular Sandman series.
Yeah. Lovecraft or Poe?
Probably Poe.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just rereading one of his stories. So yeah.
All right, let's cap it off with this. Bram Stoker or Mary Shelley?
You know, I read the original Dracula and I found it kind of boring.
Okay.
And well, yeah, it's like how many times do you have to do a blood transfusion with? I think her name was Lucy. Right? Until they figure out it's kind of vampire running around.
Right.
So, but I do like vampires, like the vampire stories better. So maybe I'll go with Stoker.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. So look, we made it to the end.
All right, man.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, but one more time though, please let everybody know where they can find you and find your work.
Yeah, theswordofeden.com.
All right, cool. So check out Sword of Eden. I'm going to pick up a copy myself. So, I'm looking forward to it. I'll definitely do a review on it.
Awesome.
Yep. Thank you so much, everybody. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll be talking to you all soon.
Thanks, JD.